Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Siamese, Elements, out August 9th on Long Branch Records. This album has 10 tracks, 35 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a Danish metalcore band. Perhaps the best way to describe the design of this record is a shooting star. A shooting star comes in quickly, it's bright, it has energy, it has light, and then it goes away. And this record, because of its length, because of how mobile it is, because of how dynamic and how fluid it becomes, it kind of feels like a shooting star. It comes in really quickly, it hits you hard, it has a lot of ups and downs, it's really bright with the sound, it's really bright with the experience, and then next thing you know, the album is over. I like this sort of design, I like this sort of length of the record because it allows them to be a lot more dynamic, it allows them to be a lot more diverse on a song-by-song basis, and everything is a little bit better together, making it easier for the listener to digest all of this diversity and all of these experiences because the album doesn't overstretch itself over a much longer period of time. Keeping it short, keeping it compact, allows the experience to be a lot more entertaining and engaging. As far as the sound is concerned, I feel like this is an album that expands upon what the previous record, Home, did. If you look back at that album, the two main core elements that come off of that record is a little bit of the heavier side of the band starts to creep in, and also the more R&B pop sound, but even vocal performance, if you will, to a certain extent, that become the two core denominators as far as Home is concerned. On this album, I felt like they expanded or took those two elements to the extremes. So this album, when it sounds heavy, it sounds a lot heavier than Home did, and when it takes you into that more pop rock R&B approach, both musically and vocally, it goes a lot further than what Home did. So it's an album of extremes, it's an album that shows the evolution of the band, not just from Home to this album, but across all of their previous records, and just allows you to see how far perhaps they can take these two core elements and still find a way of balancing them out, or at least allowing them to coexist with one another. And you're gonna find that, for example, the electronic backdrop of this record, the synth backdrop of this record, is perhaps a lot more noticeable, and it becomes a lot more of a common denominator than on any of the previous albums. It comes through quite a bit on a song-by-song basis, not always necessarily in the forefront, not always driving the experience of the songs, but it's always there in order to complete the track and in order to make the track feel a little bit more robust, but also a little bit brighter, a little bit easier to digest. Even in the heavier songs, the impact of that synth sound, of that synthetic sound, if you will, is definitely undeniable across every single song, one way or another. A little bit more, a little bit less, but it's always there. And at times you almost see the guitar sound kind of blend into it, and it becomes very difficult to tell where one ends and where the other one starts. A little bit easier to tell on the heavier songs, because obviously in those ones the guitars and drums work better together as one to push that heaviness forward and to have that as your focal point of your attention. In the songs that have more a pop R&B style approach, that are more mellow, there are that have a different atmosphere, that have a different attitude, you start to see the guitars almost creeping into that more synthetic sound, and then they become part of that picture. They become a brick on that wall. Very different the way they work with the drums, but with some similarities in terms of how they blend in the guitars with those two aspects of their sound. And the drum sound on this record is not one that's overly impactful, perhaps a little bit more on the heavier side of their sound, but overall I felt like the drums had some substance, they had some warmth in it, but they're definitely not one of the elements that jumps out as a driving force, or at least even becoming an impactful element in terms of the overall sound experience. It's definitely an album that relies a lot more on the synthetic sound, on the synth sound, on the electronic side, with a heavy touch of the guitars, and then the drums are there more to complement that overall experience. Another aspect of this record that I think needs to be said is how good Mirza's vocals are. He's an incredible vocalist. So he's one of those guys that it doesn't matter what style song you put forward. It doesn't matter if it's a pop, R&B, metalcore, rock song. He has the range that allows him to deliver a great performance regardless of the style. And I think that becomes extremely obvious on this album, considering how diverse some of the songs are, and even within the songs, how much movement the tracks have, and the blending of genres, the blending of styles is definitely always in the forefront. But he's able to rise to the top, rise to the occasion, if you will, with every single style, with every single song, regardless of what's demanded of him. I'm not a huge fan of pushing the electronic side of the sound into his vocal performance, because I feel like it takes a little bit of something away from the warmth of his delivery, and this album lyrically doesn't feel as emotional to me as, for example, Home did. I felt like Home was a more emotionally driven album. You saw that in the lyrics and you saw that in the vocal performance. This album, because of the heavy use of synths and electronic elements, both in the sound and in the vocals, it loses a little bit of that human touch. It loses a little bit of that organic warmth that comes from it, and I think that's perhaps the loss that you have by pushing that element of their sound as far as they did. But overall, still a fun record to listen to, and a quick, fun record to just sit down and experience all the different sides of this band that I feel like continues to evolve. But on this record, they defined two of the parameters of their sound, two of the elements of their sound, perhaps a little bit more significantly away from one another than ever before. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with The Shape of Water. This is the opening track and it features 1056. It's a great song to open up the record, not just because it has a feature on it, which I think it adds great value to especially to the heavier side of the sound and of the performance on this track, but it's a great song to open up the album with because it kind of showcases the two sides of this coin. It showcases the electronic side of their sound. It also showcases the heavier side of their sound. So both are well represented in this track, and having this song open up the album allows you to kind of get a glimpse into what the future is all about. Great vocals, great sound, really well blended. I really enjoy this as an opening track. Next, I want to mention God is a Woman. This is an interesting song because it has perhaps a more defined guitar presence and a more defined drum presence. It still has the synths running in the background, but it's a song that musically feels more metalcore connected than anything else. But where things change ever so slightly is in the vocal approach. There's a pre-chorus on this song that feels almost like something out of The Weeknd. It has that sort of style. It has that R&B, almost hip-hop feel in how it's delivered, and the sound behind it really makes it feel complete as far as the experience is concerned. And that's what sets this track apart, because sound-wise, it's a more modern metalcore sounding song. Even vocally, to a certain extent, that's exactly what it is. But having that pre-chorus set itself apart or bring the R&B presence into the song, it's something that becomes unique to this track and helps set this track apart. Last but not least, Utopia. This is a more straightforward song, perhaps one of the most straightforward songs on this record. It's a clean sounding song. It's a song that allows itself to breathe, that has a pop rock sound to it, and the vocals really help navigate you through it. The synth sound on this track is a little bit more layered, is creating more of a nuance and not necessarily something that has a big impact, but the brightness and the bigger sound experience is what comes across really easily to notice, and then the vocals also add to that overall brightness and allows the song to breathe really well, both musically and vocally. And it's a very balanced track, a track that stays very uniform from beginning all the way to the end. This is it, Siamese with Elements, out August 9th on Long Branch Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all on the next video. Take care, guys.